All that talk about the AFC South not being good and the Jaguars and the Colts got a big one coming up this Sunday.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What she said is a fact. It is your team every day here on both Locked On Jaguars and Locked On Colts, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network and also part of the #1 sports podcast network. And we thank you all for making us your first listen. I am with Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts, and my name is Tony Wiggins. And we're about to do a crossover, man, as we do every Thursday around the Locked On Podcast Network. Wherever you locked in at, man, make sure you tap in, whether you watch or listen, so you do not miss an episode of Locked On Colts and Locked On Jaguars, especially today. It's Crossover Thursdays, presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Jake, tell the people what's up, dog.
What is happening, everybody? We're just riding the ride when it comes to anything covering the Colts. It is never normal. They are never not boring. There is always something tumultuous, even when things are at their brightest. So we got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, we do. Here's where we're going. We're going to hit you up with the biggest storylines early, and then we'll hit you with game-changing matchups, what the winning formula is, and I'm going to try to squeeze a game prediction out of Jake. And if Jake is as smart as I think he is, and I know him to be, he's going to pick the Colts to win, and I'm going to tell him he's slap crazy. So let's make sure we go ahead and get started here. Once again, thank you for making us your first listen here on both Locked On Colts and Locked On Jaguars. It is Crossover Thursday presented by PrizePicks. Let's just get going, man. The biggest story for me is Daniel Jones. I picked y'all to finish dead last this year because I was so unsure about the quarterbacks. Well, Daniel Jones, at least for 10 or 11 weeks, had me convinced that I was dead wrong. Jake, what's been going on lately, though?
Yeah, we've kind of come full circle on Daniel Jones and the Colts altogether. You know, at first, just like you said, you know, the vibes were a little low. People were lukewarm on him, even internally here within kind of the Colts sphere of things. He was a pleasant surprise, seemed to be the perfect marriage with Shane Steichen. Things were going great. I think they were like 7-1 to start out the year. And then they just hit some sort of major hiccups around Pittsburgh. Between Pittsburgh and Atlanta, he turned the ball over like 6 times, was sacked 12 times in those 2 games. And in the last 4 games overall from now through then, the Colts have dropped 3 of their last 4. It's very peculiar how to look at this entire thing, though, because in those 2 games, Jones was definitely a problem. Now, with the Atlanta game down the stretch, late in the 4th quarter and into overtime, he made some really clutch throws, redeeming his performance a little bit because the Colts won. But then you look at Kansas City, you look at Houston in these last 2 weeks, 0-2 in those 2 games, but he's played better, you know, despite that fractured leg, believe it or not. Kansas City, I thought he was really, really good through the first 3 quarters. And then in the 4th quarter, everything just fell apart. Teams know they can just blitz the heck out of the Colts right now. And his lack of mobility is a problem. He is not the problem, but his lack of mobility is. So that's been kind of a thing. He's been relegated to being just kind of a pocket passer right now because they can't use all the bootlegs and all the getting him out and moving that they normally would and kind of cashing in on all the stuff that works so well early in the season. So he's doing well in what he's physically able to do right now. But defenses that are going to bring the heat, and the Colts have faced some really aggressive ones, they're getting home right now. And it's just limiting what the Colts can do. And so far, they haven't had a good answer for countering that.
Yeah,
we all can see it coming, and the Colts should be able to see it coming too. But defenses are just still getting home, and the offensive line in general has not really held up its end of the bargain the last few games. So that's just caused quite a few issues as well.
I think, you know, this is proof positive that maybe a fracture or a broken bone is actually worse than a high ankle sprain, because we've We've heard that for years, and dudes don't play with high ankle sprains, but they play with broken legs and broken and fractured fibulas. Trevor Lawrence hasn't been hurt, but the roller coaster that you're talking about, it hasn't occurred the same way with him as it did with Daniel Jones, whereas Daniel Jones was lights out for 7, 8, 9, 10 games, and then all of a sudden the bottom falls out. That used to happen with Trevor Lawrence every other quarter. Now, I say used to because I think it stopped like 2 games ago. So, you got to take that with a grain of salt, but you can see the progression and the impact that Liam Cohen has had on him. And you got to forget about all of the draft expectations and just look at it for what it is. The last couple of weeks, the last few weeks, we can check on True Media, man, that we always use. Trevor Lawrence has been very, very good over the last 2.5 games. He had a bunch of turnovers early against Arizona, fixed it, got it together, and now with the addition of Jacoby Myers and with the welcoming back of Brenton Strange and Brian Thomas Jr., it seems like now you can start see the promise of what this is supposed to look like, what a Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence combo looks like. The thing that gets me, though, is nobody picked these two teams except David Harrison from Locked On Commanders. He picked the Jaguars to win the AFC South, but this is new blood, not only in our division, man, but at the top of this thing headed into the playoffs. And with Houston going to Kansas City, it's going to be fun watching to see how this shapes out. I can't ever recall a time where it seems like every single week there were games that were just so important to the schedule and important to teams' playoffs hopes. We never usually see it. Usually somebody has to wait on somebody else to do their work, but now these teams are playing each other.
Yeah, I think the Colts losing to Houston last week officially made it playoff mode for all 3 of these teams at the top. Because Jacksonville and the Colts are now tied, and then Houston's just a game behind them. And then the Colts in their final 6 games had 4 AFC South matchups. So an incredibly valuable final section of the roster or of the schedule. In Jacksonville, obviously the Colts have not won there since 2014. Don't know what kind of witchcraft is going on there, but it does not matter how bad the Jags are that year or how good the Colts are that year. Going on the road against the Jaguars is some enormous problem. Andrew Luck got shut out there in his final performance in Jacksonville. Yeah, so whatever it is, that's a tough matchup. The Colts close out the season week 18 in Houston. And then the 2 non-division games they have in Seattle. Seattle's been one of the best teams all year. And again, it's in Seattle. And then they have the 49ers on Monday Night Football. So
I know it sounds like I'm taking shots of tequila every time you say that. I go,
it's
daunting.
Gauntlet.
And that's 2 games against the Jags, another against the Texans. Is that it?
Yep.
Oh my!
Not fun. They already swept the Titans. They got that done and out of the way already. But yeah, it's their final 5 games are brutal, and the playoffs start now. I really don't know that they can drop another one. They can maybe drop one and get a wild card still, but if they want to have hopes of this division, they can't lose any more division games.
Yeah, I know what you mean. The Jaguars aren't quite there, but they still have another game against the Titans. They have the 2 against the Colts. They do have a tough game at Mile High against Denver, but then they also play the Jets. But the thing about the Jets, man, you can't count anybody out these days. So
they're weird.
Yeah, it's about growing up and winning. All right, we're going to talk game-changing matchups because that's always important. I'll let Jake hit me up with whatever questions he has about the matchups. And then, of course, I'll talk about a matchup that won't happen because I think a certain player is injured. That will be Sauce Gardner. We talk about that and more in just a second here on crossover edition of Locked On Jaguars and Locked On Colts. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by PrizePicks. This holiday season is one of the best times for sports, bowl games, big basketball matchups, coaching changes, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just make the pick of more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. PrizePicks has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. All right, download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is Locked On NFL, all one word. That is the code to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. And right is the word, because we came right back at you here talking about Colts and Jaguars and Tony Wiggins. That is Jake Arthur on our crossover Thursday around our network presented by PrizePicks. All right, man, shoot, Jake, what you got?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like trying to ask you specific questions about the Jaguars is almost as challenging to answer specific questions about the Colts right now. But, you know, you had mentioned Brenton Strange returning was a big deal for Trevor, and that did seem to coincide with Trevor really leveling his playoff and getting back to that kind of upward trajectory. And then Brian Thomas Jr. from afar, you know, from my ignorant perspective, not watching the Jaguars all the time, everyone was saying how low of a season he had been having. Now it sounds like maybe things are on the up and up a little bit, but yeah, I got to get a gauge on this passing game, because the Colts also, you know, Jacoby Myers, the Colts have faced Myers already when he was with the Raiders this year, and Charvarius Ward kind of took care of that issue. Now, Ward is a little bit of a different player at this point right now than he was at that point, because the next week he would suffer kind of a devastating concussion, and this will be his third game back from it. So I'm very interested to see how that Jaguars passing game has evolved from then to now.
That's a great question. I think what happened was there were a whole bunch of things at play, and I even discussed this yesterday on my show. First of all, there was, how were you going to ingratiate Travis Hunter? Second, we're all learning a new offense, right? With new things to see, new things to do. And the coaching staff came in, and I think they determined that you had high IQ football players in Travis Hunter and Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. So we're just going to throw it at them and see what happens. And people were criticizing, saying they're only using Travis in the slot. Turns out later on, Liam Cohen actually explained that F position is the one that is the most difficult to learn. So they were actually leaning into Travis's work ethic when it comes to that and his football IQ. But if you don't really understand that, it's like, well, they should just simplify things and just throw him the ball and he'll catch jump balls. That's not the way it works, long or short term in the NFL. So what happened is BT got off to a slow start, but he was also banged up, had a little bit of a shoulder issue, and then he had an ankle injury. And what was going on? He was double clutching balls. Like ball hit him, he'd double, and then he'd get hit and the ball would come out. They were learning each other, learning an offense, learning everything, trying to get a rookie involved. And at first it was just clunky and you couldn't tell the reasons why. Then those guys got hurt and they go out and make an addition of a professional pass catcher who gets it and understands. And then they bring him in, and all of a sudden, we're going to start him outside because he plays more of the slot position, but it's too difficult for him to learn that on the fly. So that told you that what they were actually asking Travis Hunter to do was the most difficult thing when it came to their wide receivers. So sitting and watching has helped BT. I think Brenton Strange was ready to bust out. Parker Washington has busted out and has been one of their best players. So now what has happened is I think everything caught up. So from a little positive note, I said, Travis Hunter is now, instead of getting drafted by one of the worst organizations, will come back from injury next year to potentially a division winning team and a wild card team. So take that for what it's worth. And that's all that happened. And I think Trevor just had to get used to it. And then Liam Cohen just said, hey, let's let it rip, man. Let it rip. He's coaching. It's just that sometimes we get a chance to see how the sausage is made and we don't like it. But we have to wait for the results and give these guys a chance to do their job.
I like that. Yeah, and I'm not going to lie. Brenton Strange is definitely someone who I've got some concerns about, because there's been ingredients there for the Colts to be vulnerable over the middle of the field. in breaking routes and crossers, like all that stuff has kind of plagued them at times this year. And easily the worst part of their coverage is the linebackers, Zaire Franklin and Jermaine Pratt. Now, those guys have really stood up against the run, but I just look at like a Brenton Strange and what they might be able to do in the passing game with him. But how's the Jags pass rush? Because like I think numbers can be a little misleading because the Colts are like number 6 in sacks right now. But if you watch the Colts every week, it doesn't feel that way. You know what I mean? So statistically, that's one thing. But like, how do you feel about how productive Jacksonville's pass rush is?
All right, so they weren't getting sacks, but they were getting pressure. And you've heard the coaches where pressure is just as good as sacks. No, not really. Because pressure, you can't get a sack without pressure, right? But if you let a guy throw the ball away, it's 2nd and 10. If you sack him, it's 2nd and 18. So no, one thing is worse than the other. Sometimes it's just situational football, and that's what it is. But I will tell you, as of late, Trayvon's been out. And I think the same thing that happened to the offense kind of happened to the defense. Guys realize we got to pick it up. So when you go next man up and you say you got to pick it up and you bypass Emmanuel Ogbah, who was your veteran free agent, 3rd edge rusher that's supposed to give you what a veteran brings, and you start playing faster guys like Danny Strigo and BJ Green, 2 rookies that were undrafted, and you see the speed. And then you start getting Dennis Gardeck, who's a Sam linebacker, more involved. And then you start sending people from different places to make up for the fact that Walker's not there. And over the last couple of games, it's looked pretty good. Now, take it for what it's worth, the last few games have been the Raiders, Houston, Arizona, and Tennessee. Take it for what it's worth, man. But the thing is getting home is getting home. This is the NFL. The key to it is putting people in a position where they got to throw it every single time and you not being in prevent. Get a big lead and then let your guys cook. The problem is the Jaguars were stumbling and bumbling around a lot early in the year, and they weren't getting out to big leads, with the exception of the game against Houston, where they gave up 19 points. They lost a 19-point lead in the 4th quarter. It was kind of fluky, but Houston did what they had to do. But the only thing is, man, sometimes there's no magic wand to it. Guys that are on the field just have to play better. And that's what they've done. They've played better.
You look at all the commonalities for the Colts since they've hit this wall, in the last month. November was not kind to them. Again, they dropped 3 of 4 after like a blistering hot start to the season. And you look at it, it's, kind of blunders and protection, turnovers in the first 2. They haven't turned the ball over in 2 games now, though, and they've only been sacked once. So how you go 0-2 under those circumstances, I don't know. Untimely penalties, like just poorly timed big plays allowed on defense. It's just like the worst timed things where your opponent just capitalizes on those. But for me, when I look at what the Colts are going to have to do, so Alec Pierce, that was a big thing last week, and it usually is anytime they win a game. Alec Pierce plays a big role, and Jonathan Taylor. So I guess Jacksonville, I know, Greg Newsome is in there now. So how has that secondary looked? And obviously no Travis Hunter. So are they susceptible to the big play over the top, or how does that look for them?
They had some plays where there was some miscommunication. You play 2 deep safeties and they both get split, and you got inside leverage on the corner. There's no reason for some dude you never heard of in Arizona catching a slant and going 60 yards for a touchdown. But for the most part, Jarian Jones has played really, really well. 2nd-year player out of Florida State. They haven't just missed Travis. In fact, Travis was playing more offense than he was defense. They have also missed Jordan Lewis, who was their big-time free agency signing, who came back last week and knocked some of the rust off. But they've missed Eric Murray, who they also signed in free agency, who was basically allowing them to use him at free safety and create a lot of turnovers. But they've had guys like Antonio Johnson step up. Getting Newsome, they just swapped him out for Tyson Campbell because he was a better fit. But Monteric Brown has now stepped up. Guys have learned how to play when other guys were absent. And now I think when you bring those guys back in, they trust the other guy more, and therefore there's more organic and natural motivation to play. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you what I'm afraid of for the Jags, and then we'll talk about the winning formula and a game prediction here, segment 3, crossover edition of Locked on Jags and Locked on Colts. Little AFC South matchup. Everybody, well, I ain't gonna say everybody. I used to refer to the AFC South as the NFL's version of the Mountain West, but that's all right. It's all good because now you got 3 competitive teams. We all gonna pour out a little something for the Titans and tell them, yeah, we all been there. Get it together.
Mm-hmm.
I would tell you this though. I'm always afraid of a team that has a pass-catching tight end, but he's not considered a move tight end. He can also block too, because now you don't know what he's going to do. Is he going to block or is he going to leak out? And you have to always – you don't know if to get caught in a nickel, a big nickel, or be in your base defense. And I think Brenton Strange provides that same thing for Jacksonville. But the combination of having a dominant running back and a tight end, you think about play action, linebackers sniffing around in the hole, safeties – having eyes in the backfield, and then you leaking this big 6'6", 260-pound dude that runs a 4.5 out in coverage, and it can just cause a lot of serious problems, man. I can't stand it. To see tight ends running down the seam, it just stretches your defense and it challenges your windows too much on defense. So that's the thing I'm most afraid of, is that they'll get the ball out quickly because of the threat of the running game. So that's something I'm hoping that the Jaguars can make sure that they get in front of.
I would like to see Tyler Warren have kind of a bounce back performance. He's had obviously several bigger games. Like he's still the 100-yard game eludes him, but he's still had plenty of 70 plus yards. Sometimes I think they try and lean on his yards after catch a little too much, and like his primary mission in the game is a lot of just like bubble screens and stuff like that, But I would like to see them use him downfield a bit more. Like good things happen when they do. Like they had, what was it, like a 16-yard touchdown or something to him last week. So they can hit the chunk play with him. He's more than capable of doing it. He had a 41-yard catch early in the year. So he can stretch the field plenty. Like you said, he's got the speed to do it, especially if you find a mismatch like with a linebacker on him. But something that's just really been missing for them is Jonathan Taylor had almost 300 yards of offense against the Falcons in week 10. And in the couple games since then, they haven't been able to get him going yet. Like, I don't even know that he's had 100 yards from scrimmage in a game since then. Now, last week he started to do a couple things, and they totally abandoned him in the fourth quarter against the Chiefs. So obviously, like, he was off to an MVP pace in the first half of the year. Absolutely dominant. He's still leading the league in rushing right now, but they have got to find a way to get him going again, because at no point have they been getting killed to the point where they couldn't continue to use him. Even in that Chiefs game in the fourth quarter, they were up by 11 with the ball going into the fourth quarter and ran him one time. So just keep him going. And then again, Alec Pierce, I think that's just going to have to be their lifeblood, is having Jonathan Taylor as a consistent threat, because you are showing that you will go to him throughout the game, and then play action opportunities with Pierce over the top. I think they hit 2 or 3 nice plays with him off of play action last week. So it's definitely, it's a feather in the cap they have that not everyone does. Like Pierce, I think for the second year in a row is leading the NFL in yards per catch. So he's a legitimate deep threat, like contested, downfield, like all of it. Like keep feeding it to him, and good things are going to happen.
Yeah, I mentioned Pierce last week, and somebody said, "What about Michael Pittman?" I'm like, "Pierce."
What about Michael Pittman?
Yeah, Pierce is the dude that scares me because of that big playability, and he's a catch radius dude too, man. He can go up and get it. I mentioned a player that I was afraid of, a matchup that I was looking forward to. Sauce Gardner's out. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's going to probably be out a few weeks. They're not putting him on IR, so that probably means his timeline is about 3 weeks, I would imagine.
So that means to me the coach traded for him for a reason. One, he's a great player, but two, they wanted him and they needed him to go along with Charvarius Ward. And now that they don't have him, I want the Jaguars to exploit whoever that is. Come out of the huddle, break, and find whoever that is standing over there where Sauce was going to be, and then try to take advantage of it. But not to the point where you abandon making sure you get first downs and can keep possessions going and stay on the field. I think the more you limit possessions and the more you make this a situation where the Colts are like, look, we can't just sit here and get this dude the ball 5-6 times in a row, even if he gets 4 yards a carry, because we're losing. So my thing is, I want them to run out of time before they try to ground and pound with the running back and then be able to dump off to the tight end. And, oh, wow, everyone's paying attention to all of that. Here's Pierce running deep. So situational football is key for me, and one of those keys is making sure that they get ahead and limit possession. So one of the ways they can do that is to run the ball themselves, and the other way they can point out a weakness on the Colts and score some points. And I think that's what they're going to do, by the way. They've said, you mentioned that the Colts haven't won here. The Jaguars are not worried about that. They said this team has never beaten the Colts. So they are taking the approach that this is all new money. And that ain't got nothing to do with anything. If the Colts are thinking about it, fine, but the Jaguars aren't. Real quick, tell me how you feel about that, and then I'll tell you what I think is going to happen.
It is getting increasingly difficult to pick them in games, but it's the thing. We've seen them go toe-to-toe with the best teams. They beat Denver, and they've held fourth-quarter leads against the Rams and the Chiefs. They beat the Chargers pretty handily. Like, they're really on some he's a good kid, he's just on some hard times type stuff right now. You know what I mean? So I do still have faith they can do it, because even in losses, every single game, they're showing you that they're still there. They're just kind of finding new ways to lose. So I have this a really close one, like 23-20 Colts, something around there. That's probably where I'm going to settle at. I can't get to them blowing anyone out anymore until I see them just win one again. But I do still have faith they can do it and break the curse. This has been a year of them breaking curses and streaks. So I'm going to say they win 23-20 and get back on top of the division.
All right, that's a good pick. And I'm also proud of you, because sometimes people come on here with me and they buckle and go, I think the Jags going to win. I need you to be coach strong, baby. I need you to stand there. I respect people. Yeah, I respect it, man, when you just stand in the paint for your team.
They haven't gotten hammered any point this year. They just keep finding new ways to lose. You know what I mean? They're very frustrating.
Yeah, the Jaguars got hammered once, and that was against the Rams, okay? And that was in London, and that was teacher versus student. Other than that, the games have been close. And normally in those close games, there's another level of gritty that comes out of the Jaguars. So by you picking it to be a close game, this is what I've done. I have picked them to win a close game damn near every time this year, because that's just who they are. If it gets ugly and muddy, and I heard it's going to be raining Sunday, the Jaguars going to find a way to win, man. So I got the same score. I tell you what, I got a different score. I got 24-23 Jacksonville. I'll let you keep 23, and I'll go Kobe to you, Michael Jordan. How about that?
Honestly, I think I would love it to be gross weather, because then you have to lean on Jonathan Taylor, and you have to get Tyler Warren like really involved in all the like close quarters type stuff. I think I like the Colts trying to fit that sort of mold better than I do them spreading it out and trying to throw it 35 times. You know what I mean? If they do, I think that would make me feel even better. But I mean, the Jaguars, I think they're built to play well in that circumstance too. So a 24-23 game, if it's all rainy and stuff, I like that. I want to see a gross smash mouth game.
Yeah, ain't nothing wrong with it. But guess what? Me and you going to do this again soon, because they play twice here at the end of the season. So depending on how this goes, one of us going to be looking crazy the next time we do this show, because one of these teams is going to be in a bad, precarious position. But you're not in a bad spot, whether you're locked on Colts or locked on Jaguars, because it is your team every day. Always appreciate you guys making us your first listen. Tap into Locked On NFL. If you do, you've seen Jake before, because we use their clips from around the National Football League, from all the local hosts that have their finger on the pulse of the team, to let you know what is exactly going on. So make sure you check out Locked On NFL twice a day. Tyler Rowland in the morning and me in the afternoon. For my man Jake Arthur, I am Tony Wiggins. Injury-free is how we want to keep it, but Colts and Jaguars, man, once again, I cannot believe it. It is for a lot. Locked on Colts, Locked on Jags. We don't take it for granted, man. Thank y'all for spending time with us. We'll see you next time. Enjoy the game Sunday.